everyone. Good afternoon from where I am. I am visiting with my sister and brother-in-law who live in Sicily. She's been having some medical issues. They seem to be being a little better. It's a very poignant time for these elderly siblings to have some bonding time. So I'm so happy to be back seeing you. Sorry about missing last week. I was on an airplane, several airplanes, in fact. Um, so I think without further ado, let's start the sitting and then talk slightly shorter today. So we'll have a little bit more discussion and Q&A time, and some questions have already been rolling in. So we'll address some of those right off the bat after we listen to the talk. So Ina, can you start the sitting with a ding? So before we start the video, I want to say a few words, particularly as I was not present at the session last week, where many of you did the Sadhana Mahamudra in a rather unusual way over Zoom. But so many things happen this way nowadays, which is great that we're able to do that. And, there was some instruction about how to do it, but I want to give a little bit of further background on that before we get started today. So this is called the Datun study course. The main practice within the Datun context is the shamatha vipassana sitting practice of meditation and other extensions of that, walking and eating practice, but everything coming from this base of shamatha vipassana practice. Very straightforward technique of taming the mind and then expanding organically and naturally our awareness beyond an over-centralized reference point. So the Sadhana Mahamudra exists entirely within that context. That's where we come out of, and that's what we return to. So it's a very visionary, aspirational, and inspirational kind of practice that kind of, while you're doing it, it blows a vast amount of energy through your tiny little ego circuits. And then you come back to your base of shamatha vipassana. Because the practice often has to happen in a limited period of time, we adjust the length of time that we sit within the context of the sadhana. So celebratory occasions, the sitting might be quite short. That's no commentary or model for its relationship to sitting. It just happens to be what we do. So often at a retreat program, or at Datun, for example, on a given day, you might do the Sadhana Mahamudra, but it's something that comes within the context of a whole day of sitting. So I think that needs to be kept in mind. There is also, we'll get into this maybe next week, I hope, the final class. There's a moment in the sadhana where we have complete formless meditation without technique. Human beings like me, like us, we don't tend to be able to sustain that for very long. So that period might be quite short, but an important punctuation mark nevertheless. So let's talk a bit about yesterday and today, or last week and today. So maybe slightly difficult to follow, but the Vidyadhara has been going through the progression of events or stages within the sadhana, and I will summarize them briefly now and maybe return to them at the end. So the whole sadhana practice begins, as I said, with some sitting, and then we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the lineage. That's why we're in the room. And then we commit to working for the benefit of all sentient beings, rousing the heart of awake, bodhicitta, then we establish as our reference point during this period a sacred egoless mandala with deity, central deity, and with number of aspects. So that creates the visualization and embodiment. Then we essentially, following a very ancient ritual sequence, we confess. We're honest. Hey, I'm lost in the slime and muck of the dark age. It actually feels quite liberating often to admit that. Yeah, things are, I live in delusion much of the time. But just when that kind of reaches its pinnacle, we shift to celebrating enlightenment by means of identification with the gurus and the lineage. So we have, as the Vidyadhara says at one point, we have our wretchedness, ich, bleh, bleh, what makes us renounce, ugh, and we have our glory. Everybody is fundamentally already enlightened. So you have that sequence. Then the very important next step is offering, which is path of offering. All the ways in which our habit of ego orientation and centralizing has deluded us into possessing everything. We believe we possess. Can't even see it. It's that close to us. So we offer every conceivable thing, and ultimately we offer ourselves. As he will say in today's talk, you give the giver. So the giver doesn't get to say, hey man, I'm so generous. I've given everything. I'm giving it all away. So now I'll be enlightened. You got to give that away. And that's why this talk is called Surrender. And this is the pathway to all those virtues that are described and ascribed to the sacred deity, which is ultimately the nature of your own mind. But there are no tricks. To have hatred, to have anger without hatred, there's no trick to that. It's not like something you pull out of your bag of tricks. Well, how do I do that? You do that by following the path, and then it emerges. It comes. There's no shortcut. No bag of tricks. So, without further ado, let's jump into surrendering. And continue what we discussed last night, that notion of devotion brings further sense of actions that are appropriate in connection with the devotion.
a sense of longingness, and a sense of absence of arrogance begin to provide general background in which that we could operate quite freely with a sense of devotion. And that particular activity, which is connected with expressing devotion, is what's known as offering, surrendering. I think it would be helpful to just let you hear the part of the offering, which is the next procedure, seemingly having already inspired oneself to surrender and open, have a devotion, then that doesn't become just simply paying a lip service, so to speak. And there's some actions that followed after that.
To the crazy wisdom form of the Buddhas of the three times, the unified mandala of all the siddhas, Dorje, Troller, Karma, Pakshi, I make this supplication. Desire, hatred, and other hindrances are self-liberated. To the boundless rainbow body of wisdom, Padmakara, Karma, Pakshi, the all-pervading Haruka who exists independent of people's beliefs, I make this supplication. Whatever is seen with the eyes is vividly unreal in emptiness, yet there is still form. This is the true image of Tusum Chenpa, whom now I supplicate. Whatever is heard with the ears is the echo of emptiness, yet real. It is the clear and distinct utterance of Mikyo Dorje, whom now I supplicate. Good and bad, happy and sad, all thoughts vanish into emptiness, like the imprint of a bird in the sky. This is the vivid mind of Rangjung Dorje, whom now I supplicate. The animate and the inanimate are the mandala of the glorious Mahasiddha, which no one can change. It always remains impressive and colorful. This mandala now I supplicate. The hope of attaining Buddhahood and the fear of continuing to wander in samsara, doubt as to whether wisdom exists within one, and other dualistic thoughts to act as hindrances, all these are my feast offering. Food, wealth, companionship, fame, and sensual attachments, all these I offer for the elaborate arrangement of the mandala. Wantingness, desire, and passion I offer as the great ocean of blood which comes from the killing of samsara. Thoughts of anger and hatred I offer as the amrita which intoxicates extreme beliefs and renders them inoperative. All that arises within, wandering thoughts, carelessness, and all that is subject to ignorance, I offer as the great mountain of Dharma, ornamented with the 8 kinds of consciousness. Whatever arises is merely the play of the mind. All this I offer, filling the whole universe. I offer, knowing that giver and receiver are one. I offer without expecting anything in return and without hope of gaining merit. I make these offerings with transcendental generosity in the Mahamudra. Now that I have made these offerings, please grant your blessings so that my mind may follow the Dharma. Grant your blessings so that my Dharma practice may win success on the path. Grant your blessing so that in following the path confusion may be clarified. Grant your blessing so that confusion may be transformed into wisdom.
I think it's a question of that do you know how to give? Sometimes we think we know, sometimes we wonder. The notion of giving itself is an interesting point. That you don't just give things for sake of giving, unless you want to get rid of something. Which wouldn't be regarded as a particular gift, it's just a throwing in the garbage pail. And unfortunately, we have a time to give things, usually. We have our birthdays, Christmas. What else do you have? All kinds of baby showers and housewarming parties and whatever you have. You don't just give things like that. We always would like to coincide our gift. When we return home, if we're generous enough, we bring a gift to our spouse or children, parents. That's an entirely different kind of tradition there is. That the gift doesn't have to be coincide with a certain social norm alone. But a gift can be made at any time. That seems to be the basic idea. The question is, when we give, what kind of motives do we have? Motivation do we have? We tend to express some kind of appreciation that the other person has given you enough love, education, support, whatever, that you think it makes you give to this person to pay such people back. And the other gift we usually make is that in order to win somebody over, which is a kind of a subtle blackmail, that by making a gift, hopefully that person will be favorable to you. But on the whole, we don't make any kind of gifts without purpose to give, without schemizing the gift, the time and situation that gift could be made properly. One of the interesting definition about the generosity in even bodhisattva level. That generosity or discipline is regarded as act of letting go. And the purpose of the gift of practicing such paramita is to learn from your life and experience, or vision rather, that you are not expecting anything in return. Which is very hard for us to do because we are brought up in the social norm. Some people are embarrassed that you don't want to be put in a situation that you have to make a gift to somebody. And you have to express some kind of statement, and you don't want to do that. The idea of giving something purely, it is absence of arrogance, and it is longing, doesn't seem to be particularly good in the ordinary business point of view of social norm, that you are throwing your money down the drain. If you feel already absence of arrogance and already feel humble, why don't we just maintain that virtue and hold it closest to our heart and make the best of wealth out of it rather than make further gift with the inspiration of that, which could be regarded as completely impractical. In fact, we could go as far as to say it is insane to do such thing in the ordinary conventional world. In this case, idea for giving, offering, is not to prove how wealthy you are, how artistic you are, how visionary you are, but just giving everything there is or about. That you're giving your body, your speech, your mind, you're giving the giver, in other words, completely. So it ceases to become even a gift, it's just a letting go. Unfortunately, we would like to watch the receiver of the gift appreciating what they received. And say, thank you very much. It was very sweet of you to give me yourself. You're asking for confirmation again. And at minute when the person supposedly supposing hypothetical situation, supposing that when you give your whole being, your giver to somebody, somebody thanks you back, and you haven't actually given it, you got it back. you're giving your anger, which is not so much you're giving up. You're giving up smoking cigarettes. But in this case, you're giving your anger. There's this tremendous sense of giving the security of anger and the security of a passion. Not that anger is regarded as a nuisance to you, so you decide to give up, like giving up smoking cigarettes. Get rid of it. We usually experience some sense of security in our, even the hang-ups, our problems, so-called problems. We might feel that we are somewhat inadequate, that you keep on losing your temper, most inappropriate times, feel bad about oneself. But on the other hand, when each time reason why you lose a temper is because you're not so much angry on the cause and effects that presented on the spot, but you would like to reaffirm yourself, your existence, you would like to express yourself, make a statement that I do exist. It might be painful to lose temper, discomforting, but at the same time, it is a part of the game that we play to ourselves, that we would like to confirm our existence. We are dying to have confirmations here and there, right and left, all the time. When we hear something when we heard something that we don't like, you get angry, pissed off. It's not only so much that you're pissed off and that you think that you heard wasn't good for you or in agreement with you alone, but it is also because you have to keep on affirming yourself all the time. In some cases, people go to the extreme of attempting to commit suicide ceremoniously, so hoping someone will prevent you to do so, so that in turn you get more attention, more confirmation. Someone will feel sorry for you. We often say, I don't like this, I want to get rid of. I want to see a therapist. I want to take a downer or upper, whatever. It depends on the case. I want to see a guru. Only if I can get rid of these problems, I will be happy. I'll be very happy. But actually, we don't mean that. We cherish so much of our neurosis. We don't want to give, we want to be improved. We usually are a great scheming person. There's so much schemizing taking place that finally we lose track of who's doing what, which is which. We find ourselves completely lost track of our successful schemes. that we begin to catch tail end of the one particular scheme, and before we begin another scheme, so that we are completely caught up with that kind of confusion. But still, nevertheless, we would like to maintain ourselves. We don't want to give those things. You could say it would be nice if I could give my anger, give up my anger, give you, here's my anger, you have it. This is my gift. But you don't really mean it. Probably you're proud of it, you have a fantastic gift. And it's purely chauvinistic gesture than real giving, surrendering, free from expectations, realization of the giver and receiver one that never takes place. If there's an immense sense of devotion that you can actually give the background, the giver, then the person is ready to receive blessings or adhisthana. That seems to be our usual problem, that we don't want to give. Maybe we want to pay for something if it comes along with something else that you can get. But we don't really want to just give, even not knowing whether you're going to get a reward out of it, or not knowing even you actually have it, have yourself with you, having given. That's a terrible thought. If you have to give the whole thing and nothing is back, you can't even watch the process of giving. You can't even take part in that particular ritual. You might say this is asking too much. Definitely it is asking too much. That's why it is important, asking a lot. That's why it is a very special kind of giving process. Asking a lot, absolutely everything, including the giving the giver, which is very hard for us to do. Giving process is preparing. There's enough room, space, so that what's known as the enlightenment, waking state of experience, can be felt. And that can't take place if the receiver is already a conditional one, based on a conditionality, based on a sense of a reference point and a sense of a business mentality. So it had to be absence of business mentality, basically. Otherwise, it couldn't take place. So in other words, when we begin to receive the teachings, nobody's receiving it. But teachings become part of you, your particular basic being. Rather than you receive the teaching as a gift, package deal, that you are now possessor of the Dharma, the teachings. And you can't ensure that, you can't put that in the safe, you can't deposit that in the bank. So receiving teaching is not so much regarded as endowment, which has been part of the spiritual materialistic tendency, is you will say, I went to such and such teacher, such and such a guru, such and such a lama, and I receive millions of thousands of initiations. I've been ordained in trillions of sanghahood, and I'm fully ordained and fully initiated. And I'm completely soaked in these blessings. Which will be the most decadent way of viewing teachings. You'll be collecting. And that particular style could be regarded as committing sin, actually. That your ego's lavish indulgences are regarded as, in order to develop ego's lavishment, that you are using teachings and teachers as a part of the conspiracy. Which will bring down and down, rather than open up to anything related to the weight. You're falling deeper and deeper into sleep. So from that point of view, spiritual discipline is obviously quite different from collecting credentials, PhDs and professorial credentials, academicians, and all kinds of things that you can do with the educational world, because still you're trying to become the greatest scholar of the world. But in terms of spiritual discipline, it is impossible to do that. And the heavier that you collect the credentials, that much you lose your own credentials. That whole thing is based on not giving, purely collecting. You become a mystical egomaniac beggar who keep on begging, keep on getting things, become more and more and more mystical in the wrong end of the stick, in one's own ego. Every minute this whole thing becomes more and more gross level, or rather than anything refinement, anything prajna or wakeful. Absolutely nothing. It's all things heavier, dirtier, more sloppy, further collections of credentials, which is based on our giving the giver. When the giver is given, you are completely committed and you are not running away for the next closest master. If you get slightly discomforted with the previous master, previous teacher, then you use that as credentials before you completely blow up the whole thing. And it was convenient, you take leave and you go to the next one and use the previous job as your passport. It sounds very unreasonable and very sad, but there are such people who do that. In fact, I know quite a lot of them. They are very sweet and nice and rugged and homey, but there are definitely problems with them, in spite of exterior. Whole thing seems to be an idea of giving. This is not particularly supposed to be a fundraising pitch as such. But notion of giving the giver is a key point. That seems to be the only way that the teacher can relate with you and open up, and meeting of the two minds can take place. We could almost quite safely say that up to a certain extent that the real teachings can be only received when nobody's at home. As long as somebody's at home, it's very difficult to receive teachings. And that person at home would like to possess, own it, is homeowner, possess the teachings as well. They're going to turn into merchandise. So the only way to receive real teachings is that somebody who actually are not there. There are a lot of demands being made. The practitioners of this particular sadhana. It is a higher level demand, which based on higher Vajrayana teachings. I suppose it could be practiced in a lower level too. But the basic philosophy behind it is based on a very subtle and very unreachable by ordinary minds level. If you have any questions, you're welcome. Mr. Cohen?
So, if there are any questions, you're welcome.
Well, actually, Ina.
Oh, sorry, Barry. Yeah, of course, it's the time for your remarks.
Yeah,
I was carried away.
Yep, that's okay. He asked for questions, and folks can go online if you want to hear the question from the illustrious Mr. Cohn, quite an interesting person in his own right. So send some regards to him, to the late Mr. Cohn, and appreciation. So I'd like to start the remarks by having Ina read a series of questions that have come in since last week that I've been contemplating, and I think that will provide an entry point into what I wanted to say, and then we'll have some general questions from there. So Ina?
Yeah, actually, these were the questions from the Chinese language group. So Sophie will read them. Or Sophie, do you want me to read it?
Either way.
You can okay. You can unmute yourself, Sophie, and just go ahead.
Yeah, hello, Barry. I don't have a question from my group. I have a personal question. In this teaching, Rinpoche mentioned how we often turn initiations and teachings into mystical credentials, leading to deeper spiritual materialism. My question is, when we are not just collecting teachings, but even collecting the feeling of surrender and humility, how can we apply prayana to discern whether we are truly giving the giver or simply skillfully redecorating a more spiritualized ego? That's my question. Thank you.
Yes. That's okay. I'll address
would you like
this
to take
question.
that? Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then I can dig up the questions that we were referring to, or you can bring them forward.
I can. Yeah, okay.
So in reference to the question of using practice, and in this specific case, esoteric practice or subtle practice, which he referred to as unreachable by ordinary minds, turning that into a spiritualized ego. So you need various kinds of protections and guardrails to work with that. First of all, a commitment to sitting meditation, so that when thoughts arise, we can have the capability to see them more clearly and cut through them. That in terms of the paramita practice, we can see the work of ego and apply the practices of generosity and discipline and effort, prajna, clear seeing. It's not so much that we're trying to be a good boy or a good girl and never make a mistake. As I said in an earlier discussion, the Vidyadhara said, "Shame on those who make no mistakes, for that is their mistake." So one can see oneself embryonically developing a spiritualized ego. You can see that and think, "Oh, okay, look at that." And at that point, you have the possibility of undercutting it, and it could come up again. Because you're taking risks in trying to go beyond ego, those kinds of things are going to emerge. Another big feature is your fellow Sangha members who can see what's going on, and if they have compassion toward themselves and toward you, then they can help you to cut through, and the teachers and guides and the Dharma itself. If you have various aspirations that you might make, so that, for example, grant your blessings so that confusion, so that we clarify confusion, those kinds of things. We have all those kinds of reminders. Is that helpful?
Thank you, Barry. According to my understanding, you emphasizes that the protection against a spiritualized ego isn't more knowledge, but the actual practice of sort of shamatha vipassana. This provides the prayana, that is a clear thing necessary to catch the ego in the act of spiritualizing itself. That's my understanding.
Yes, very much I'm emphasizing that. So practice, just as you described, but study is also helpful in terms of, they say that it's said in the teaching that study makes us gentle by, humbling us in the face of inspiring teachings. So yes, I agree with what you said, very much so.
Thank you very much. Thank you, I see. Yeah.
So Ina, do you have those questions that I was referring to?
Yes, actually, Helena has them, and she already raised her hand. So please, Helena, unmute yourself and go ahead, ask this question that Barry is expecting.
Okay, there are 5 questions in total. First one, how do we distinguish between genuine devotion and spiritual materialism in our practice? And second one is, what does it truly mean to admire without competing, possessing, or distancing ourselves? Third, are we using our accomplishments and credentials as a passport into sanity rather than representing ourselves nakedly? The fourth one, how can we practice devotion without expecting something in return or trying to make deals with the guru? Fifth, what it meant by anger without hatred.
So I wanted to have all those questions read at once because they have a thematic thread running through them that really I want to address in terms of how the sadhana works and what it's about and what the Vidyadhara was talking about today. So let's take anger without hatred, for example. So it's not like we're in a school class and here in chapter 6 it says, okay, now here are the techniques we're going to use to develop this thing called anger without hatred. You're going to do, you got this thing you could do, and then you got that thing you could do, and it works like this. What is presented here is presented from the viewpoint of fruition. This is a totally fruitional vision. Can you imagine the power of anger like a thunderstorm without the idea of obliterating some kind of other? Can you imagine seeing wrongdoing and be able to say no without adding to it, you nasty so-and-so? We find ourselves, as he says, what we're holding on to with our emotion, like anger or passion, it's not the pureness of it, it's the security of it. It's our anger that we're going to inflict on somebody else, which therefore will confirm that we exist. But in the midst of that is the pure energy of anger or passion. This is the subtlety that he's saying it's very hard to reach by what he called ordinary minds, meaning minds like ours that are generally encased in the context of self-referential ego and ownership. So we begin trotting on that path again, as I was saying earlier about with shamatha vipassana, mind taming, and then we can begin to explore our emotions, and we can be inspired by the possibility of anger without hatred, which is a very sublime embodiment. So he said repeatedly in this talk, you're being asked a lot. This is very hard to do. So it's a very expansive vision. At the beginning of the section that he was working with today, it says, desire, hatred, and other hindrances are self-liberated. So within the context of the sadhana, at a very fruitional level, where complete, perfect enlightenment is the condition, and Buddhahood is the condition of all beings, that's as fruitional as you can get. These obstacles, desire, hatred, and other hindrances, are liberated on the spot without a path there, because they never existed in the first place in the context of Buddhahood. But when the sadhana ends and you go next door and your friend is doing something that pisses you off, the chances that desire and hatred might be self-liberated instantly might be rather low. But in the context of the sadhana, we see the view of what is possible. And the main pathway that he's putting, that the sadhana puts forward right after this, is to give. Give, give, give. Now, there was a question in there about how can we give without expecting anything in return? It's very hard to do. So you begin by having that aspiration. So the virtues and qualities and embodiments that are represented in the sadhana emerge as byproducts of the practices. It's journey without goal. They don't come about by trying to get them. You don't get anger without hatred by figuring out how to do it. Because all that's going to happen there is that somebody's going to be home, as he said, and that somebody at home is going to figure out how to do this thing. And the only way, he said, the Dharma can really reach is if nobody's home. So this is the vast fruitional vision. And even in the context of everyday, ordinary practice, we can have glimpses of that fruition and even somewhat extended periods of that. And then things might come rushing back in because of the momentum of karma and klesha. And we have this visionary notion that we could actually offer these things. And the very act of offering, so it says, the first thing we offer is the hope of attaining Buddhahood and the fear of continuing to wander in samsara. That's the first thing we offer. I hope I'm going to get out of this mess. You give that up right off the bat. You're just going to offer that. That's a richness that you are going to give away. You really would like to have it, but you're going to give that away. Then doubt that wisdom exists within one. So your doubt. No, I don't have wisdom, I'm small, I can't give that. All the other dualistic thoughts, they're your feast offering. They're just this rich quality of within. In the Zen tradition, it's called the manure of Bodhi. You're putting this manure on the field. It's richness. From this ultimate fruitional perspective, it's seen as riches. And the guru and the lineage, they want to feast on that. Yum, 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 yum. Yum, yum. Yes. Give me that hatred. Give me that all that stuff, that security that you're holding on to. I don't want your show of how good a Buddhist you can be. Give me your shit. Give me the stuff that the blockages. And so it goes on from there. All those things that are offered, food, wealth, companionship. It doesn't mean you stop eating food. It doesn't mean you don't have, a house to live in or whatever you need. And companionship, you're not going to stop having friends. Fame, sensual attachments. It's not that you don't have those things in one's life. It's that you don't hang on to the security of them. So that's why we say a chant when we're about to eat. The food we take in is for the merit of all sentient beings. So within this sadhana, to conclude, this surrendering section is key to the path at this level of Dharma. And by doing the sadhana, it gives us that kind of vision and inspiration. And then we get back down to whatever work we happen to be doing. If it's primarily shamatha vipassana, then we're doing that. And whatever practice and path of study and practice we may be following, shamatha vipassana is going to be at its core. And this provides some uplift and vision of what's possible, that it's quite liberating to just even consider the possibility that all these things we regard as hang-ups are riches that we could give away. So I surrender the floor now at this point and to some further questions and discussion.
The chat is enabled again, so whoever wants to post their question in the chat can do so. Otherwise, just raise your hand. Okay, we have Ela. Ela, do you want to start your? Okay, great. You can unmute yourself now.
Do you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. So I have a question. I was wondering, you sent with the for the last time we did this with Tashi, we practiced the sadhana of Mahamudra, and you've been sending us the link. So my question is, can we go through this with the intention that we did this already in a group. So when I repeat this, is it still a group thing, or can I just go through it again? Because I have the recording of it. So this is
yeah, I think we should, at the end of the course, we should publish some guidelines about this.
Okay.
So you can study it, you can read about it, but you're not empowered to practice it by yourself. It is a group practice.
Yeah.
And it's a group practice led by people who have been qualified and sanctioned to lead it.
Yeah.
Only a few years ago, we started doing the online practice because, Dharma practitioners are spread all throughout the world. And of course, we went through COVID, but it is a group practice.
Yeah.
So you can find times and ways that it is being led formally in group practice.
Yeah.
And
I did. I found a group already, and it starts in the new moon and the full moon.
Yeah.
But I was just asking for the recording we have from the last time we practiced it with Tashi. So whether we can go through it again, or is this not allowed? So just reading it when I have the
group
book.
practice.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
I think there is a question in the chat, actually, a few questions.
Talk about the offerings of shit in the context of the 4 types of giving. 4 types of giving. Well, I know of 3 types of giving. What 4 types of giving are you referring to? Whoever asked this question.
Leela, maybe you can just raise your virtual hand and, follow up with the clarification. And another person was asking, is it possible to use the mantra triple hung as a part of daily life?
Well, let me take that last one first. No, don't do that. That's what we would call freelancing. I don't know how that translates into other languages, but the sadhana is an entire context. It's not to be taken apart in pieces. You set up the mandala, you do what's in that mandala, you dissolve, and you allow whatever byproduct occurs to occur. You don't take pieces out and take them on the road. So,
okay.
All right, so let's get back to this question about 4 types of giving. I know 3 types, but
Leela is actually raising her hand. So before going to Gachen, let's just ask Leela to clarify. And Leela, you can unmute yourself and start the video if you want.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yep.
Great. Thank you for this class. It's really wonderful. I appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
Thank you. I'm curious now about the 3 types of giving. But the 4 types of giving, as in the pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and subjugating.
Oh dear. Well, all right. So in my practice and understanding, we would not translate those activities we call them most generally called the 4 karmas, meaning actions, enlightened actions, pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and destroying. Holy cow, it makes for a complicated question. So, what were you asking these?
Well, because
let's talk about the offerings of shit in the context of, all right, so the 4 karmas, and then I will go back to the 3 types of giving or generosity.
Can I share this? So I did the Mudra class years ago with, I think it was Craig Pierce. So Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche's class of Mudra. And I found this a while ago called The 4 Karmas of Mudra. that Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche had, and it was finding demons is pacifying, killing them is enriching, welcoming them is magnetizing, and using them is destroying. And so I was thinking of how you were just explaining, like giving your doubt, giving up all of these hang-ups as this rich offerings. And so I was thinking, of course, how this would correlate in that context.
So, it's a little too complicated to take Rinpoche's particular explication of the four karmas in that context of talking about them in terms of relating to demons and bring it into this context. But I can talk about the four karmas, pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and destroying. So
wonderful.
The most significant thing I think one can understand about those actions is that at the level that we're talking about, when we're talking about these kinds of enlightened actions that still have a quality of path to them, they have a quality of being self-existing. So it's not, I am going to pacify this situation. I am going to enrich. I'm going to magnetize. I'm going to destroy. These are elemental energies that can be seen from the point of view of non-ego, and we can, as our practice becomes more developed and refined, we can arouse them in the environment. Now, because we're still on the path, we're probably going to have some of our stuff mixed up in there. But the ultimate of the karmas is the working with that elemental energy rather than the gross ego strategies we tend to employ in working with the phenomenal world and beings. So to give an example of destroying, for example, fire has the quality of destroying. So in this sadhana, Dorje Trollo is, there are flames coming out. So destroying is the ultimate form of purifying that you could purify with water, you cleanse with water. That's kind of at the pacifying level. But if a thoroughgoing cleansing is required, fire does it. Fire consumes the very thing it's purifying. There's nothing left. So that's not something that you wield from the petty point of view of your ego game about how can I be a great enlightened activist or warrior. It's as a result of your meditation practice and Mahayana development, you can get more in touch with those possibilities and play with those energies. So does that make any sense? Lila?
Can you hear me, Barry?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you. I was thinking of it in a different way, but I really like your perspective. And I'm curious about the 3 types of giving. So, and
they're very
ask you
straightforward,
Great.
because I feel I need to move on. So
Yes.
3 types of generosity: material goods, material things, courage, and dharma. So in the Bodhisattva path, dana paramita, give people food, that kind of thing. Whatever they need in the material level is a form of giving. Giving people courage is a very important one, not to be overlooked. So when somebody is down and out, you create the space for them to be encouraged that they could move forward and hopefully move forward in a dharmic direction. And then finally, dharma, that's the ultimate gift. Okay.
Okay.
Gotchen?
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me, Barry?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. My question is regarding the topic of making an experience where no one is at home. It seems to me that if you're making a truly non-dual experience, of course, there's nobody there to experience it. Or there's no experience to make as such. I mean, I feel like what you get is maybe the aftermath or an afterglow of that when you be yourself again. But while you're not there, and there's nobody there.
Well, I think I got some sort of interruption there. Anyway, whatever. I think I get your question. So this could relate to, he talked about adhisthana, which is blessings or sprinkling. And so if you are truly to receive the blessings of the lineage, it's most possible when you have emptied out the vessel that, you don't have the striving to get from one place to another. That's what surrender results in. So as you're saying, you could be in that space. And he gives a description in another place that I wanted to read about what adhisthana is. Is what's happening, what are Buddhist blessings? Somebody asks him. And this is from the 1974 Jamon Control seminar. He says, it could be an internal glow. We have to, linguistically, we need to rethink these terms. What does blessing mean in this context? We need new patterns of thinking developed with the help of Buddhism. As far as blessings are concerned, it is glowing yourself. The real definition is just to be blessed. It's not so much that you are given or that you be blessed. Instead, you are re-glowing yourself. You have lost your strength. You're developing your strength. You are glowing yourself again, rekindling without using fire or flame from outside, but you produce a fire from within yourself. So, sometimes they talk about it's like water being poured into water, the meeting of the minds. And, in a specific context of, receiving that kind of blessing when nobody's home, it's going to have the quality of kind of an afterglow, as you describe, and then you're back to the day-to-day business. However, it's going to have a byproduct. And, that's really the quality of doing the sadhana, that you get the glimpses and some kind of quality of that energy maybe briefly there isn't anybody home, and those blessings come through and we can understand them as non-dual. It's not coming from out there to this. But then,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you. Good question. Some other questions?
Yes, I got one question from the chat, and Barbara is asking, when going through the practice last week, I was overcome by deep emotion, tears, even though I have been practicing for a number of years. Can you please comment on that?
Practicing, I'm sorry to ask a follow-up question, but practicing the sadhana for many years or meditation generally, or what, in what context?
Barbara, do you want to follow up in the chat, or you can raise your hand because we need more information. Meanwhile, while we're waiting, do you want to take another question? Oh,
Yeah,
actually, Barbara just replied that she has been a
okay.
Dzogchen practitioner. So
Mhm.
just practicing in general and Dzogchen
Okay,
in
great.
particular.
That's very, very helpful. So that's not an uncommon experience at all, really. Not at all. That the sadhana, sometimes when, and maybe Tashi said this, I don't know, but when you're first doing it, we suggest to people that they just let it wash over them rather than, try to be extremely precise about the details. So what I can't ascertain precisely what the quality of emotion was for you, but there tend to be certain kinds of patterns. One of the things that the sadhana does is, as I was saying earlier, it's very honest and open proclamation of the nature of samsaric entrapment, which is combined with a deep longing to open up to the lineage and the stream of practice and blessings that could lead to liberation. So, which has a strong sense of longing, and that longing can be, genuine devotion, mo gu in Tibetan, longing with respect, that combination. And then, it proclaims the possibility of that our hindrances could be liberated on the spot. It gives us the vision of all our stuff, as the earlier questioner was talking about, can be a feast, which for some reason here in Sicily, I'm finding it very easy to imagine things in that way. I'm sitting, in fact, at a very long feast table in front of me in one of those outdoor kitchens where 3 or 4 generations of people feast. And, so that is exhilarating. And then what we can do with that is bring it to ground, integrate it on the path. So one thing that the Vidyadhara has said about the sadhana practice, sadhana Mahamudra, is that it presents both the gradual path and the instantaneous path. The danger of the instantaneous path, totally fruitional, on-the-spot enlightenment, is you can fool the living shit out of yourself that suddenly you got something that's long-term and, fuck the rest of the path, I'm enlightened, and, maybe even at some subtle level you think that. The power of the sudden path is its abruptness. It doesn't give ego any room to feather its nest, which is the power of the gradual path, which is the primary path that we follow, is it can allow us to gradually develop, which is something that beings, have ways of doing. You gradually learn how to eat, you gradually learn how to walk, you gradually learn how to cook, you gradually, et cetera, et cetera. The downside of the gradual path is it can give ego a lot of room for focusing on improving itself, as the Vidyadhara said in this talk. He said, you don't want, how do you put it? You don't want to give the giver, you want to be improved. So we've got both those qualities. And part of what can be so exhilarating about doing the sadhana can be that sense of the sudden path, the abrupt path, that power. But then we need the gradual path. So, that feeling of energy and deep emotion, it can be a very common result of practicing the sadhana.
Do we
Andrew,
have time?
we'll go a little bit more if people want to stay around. Hello,
Oops.
Andrew.
Hello, Barry. Thank you. I'll try and keep it quick. I suppose it's trying to clarify that I haven't completely got the wrong end of the stick here. That the difference in this sadhana to say my limited understandings of other ones is, you're creating this space and you're tapping into some kind of aspirational energy that you can dissolve and integrate within yourself. Whereas here, I find the whole thing it's really interesting because it's so, I find it so unsettling and disruptive that once, and is that normal? And this is the misunderstanding that I'm struggling with, that, once I've gone to this charnel ground, I'm on that rock, right? Like, I've got to come correct straight away. There's nothing to gain here. I've got to come there and give up this shit and come as I am. Like, so there's nothing to be gained. There's so much to ask to begin. You know what I mean? From that starting point, that there's nothing that I'm gaining to slowly improve here. I've got to come as I am from the get-go, as soon as I'm in that place.
That's it. Yeah.
I got it then.
I hear you then. Yeah. And I think so there's a certain amount of uniqueness about this sadhana and a certain quality that, that if I got technical, I could talk about the level of sadhana that this is, where just pardon the technicality for a minute. So that, we have in sadhanas, you have samaya sattvas and jnana sattvas. Jnana sattvas are coming from above and joining with the intentional samaya sattvas, and then there's this whole emergence. In this sadhana, boom.
Yeah.
You're like, you step into the race car and you're going 190 kilometers an hour from the get-go. That's why it's a group practice. It's only done periodically. It's done in the context of people who have a relationship. So sometimes you're going to do the sadhana and it's like putting your hand in the light socket. Other times it'll be comme ci, comme ça, blasé. It'll be all over the place. but it has that kind of power. And then just bring it to the path. Don't think too hard about it. What's being asked of you, which you correctly perceived as a lot, as he said, is within the context of this time of practice. We're going to carve out this space, and we're going to go there, and then we're going to come back to the day-to-day, and there's going to be some kind of byproduct. So, and we need a context to work with that. So is that anywhere near what you're asking about?
Yeah, I think emphasizing the power of it, for want of a better word, or the disruptiveness that it could be. That I understand the requests for it being guarded in the way it has been.
I think I didn't address quite, and I'll do so briefly now, both the power, and that's, I wouldn't say there's a lack of a better word. That's one of the best. This is the embodiment of the siddhas. Siddha is power. So, so there's power. There's also disruptiveness.
Yeah.
The sadhana was written in a context of the insight that genuine dharma coming into a wider world is threatened by spiritual materialism. And it's uncompromising in disrupting the habits that could lead to that. And, buckle your seatbelts. But then, this racetrack has very good guardrails and a very good vehicle. And at the end, you get out and you haven't crashed, but something's happened. So, and, in a small way, you will self-disrupt, and that could rub off. So thank you. Maybe one more, I don't know. Silvana Barbanti.
Silvana, if you want, you can unmute yourself and start your video.
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much. I have a kind of ongoing question in my mind for quite a while, but it's not really direct to what you discussed today, Barry. If you don't mind, I don't know.
Well, let's see what it is.
Yeah. So it's just like that's me. I compare many things. So when I compare like someone, young person, go to university and go to all whatever field is, go to all the studies, for example, to be a doctor, to treat people, to be, doctor of a specialized doctor, goes years and years, studies and studies, and the final, the person will start work and will treat patients, will be eventually a successful doctor, helping many people. And then we go to this spiritual path where you try years, decades, and it's difficult to see if anything changed at all. You know what I mean? And recently, I watched a video by Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and he said, "Oh, yeah, some students say, oh, nothing changed. I'm the same as I was 60 or 50 years ago." And he said, 60 or 50 years is nothing for spiritual practice. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's just the monk mind, like trying to see if something changed, because it's just that. Why, and my question is, why is so difficult? It seems like it's exhausting, this process, because you go and you see I'm the same with the same
Okay,
garbage.
I
Thank
think
you.
I get the question. I'm not cutting you off. It's just a matter of time. Well, you said it didn't have anything to do with today's talk, but you're starting to answer your own question. It's exhausting. Damn right it is. So be exhausted. Be exhausted with ego. That's where it's taking you. And, in a more practical sense, what's exhausting is fighting with ego. There's letting go is where it's leading us. So we get exhausted. It's ego that's getting exhausted. Ego is like a shoe that you wear out by walking in it. So in terms of assessing progress, the Atisha's slogans are extremely helpful, I find, in that regard. A couple of them are potent. All dharmas agree at one point, and that one point is lessening of ego. And our progress is not linear, but the benchmark is there lessening of ego. Sometimes others can see that, but also it says of the two witnesses hold to the principal one, something like that. Of the two witnesses are yourself and the judgments of others. So principal one is your own perception of whether you're giving up ego is ego lessening. It's very important for teachers to emphasize the scope and breadth of the path. On the other hand, where the hell else are you going to go? You're on the path. And at times, if the path is rough, we really need Sangha. We really need Sangha. You have to have whatever means you find to get some support, because, the path has vicissitudes, ups and downs. Hope that was in some way encouraging.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, exhaustion, it's a good thing. So maybe we've exhausted our time together. So
Yeah. Speaking of
and,
exhaustion.
yes. So feast on the rest of your day. So
Thank you, Barry.
oh, you're
Thank you
welcome.
very
Thank you,
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Barry.
Thank you
Very
very
much.
much.
Thank you,
Thank
Barry.
you.
Very much,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Travel.
Thank
Barry.
you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Barry.
Yeah.
You're amazing. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Barry.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thanks.